Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is one that completely caught me off guard, and I promise you, by the end of it, you're going to understand why one small decision can reveal more about a person's heart than 1,000 grand gestures ever could. It all started with a man named Victor Langston. Victor wasn't just rich, he was the kind of billionaire whose name appeared in business magazines next to skyscrapers and stock charts. He owned half the downtown skyline, several tech companies, and a reputation for being sharp, calculating, and emotionally distant. People admired him. Some feared him. Very few actually knew him. Victor believed in tests. He tested his executives. He tested his partners. He even tested his friends. In his world, trust wasn't given, it was earned. But there was one person in his building he had never really paid attention to. Daniel Reyes. Daniel was a janitor. He worked the night shift at Victor's corporate headquarters. Quiet, respectful, always on time. He had been with the company for nearly 8 years. He never asked for favors, never complained, never tried to get noticed. He simply did his job and went home, and sometimes, on weekends, Daniel brought his 10-year-old son, Mateo. Mateo was a small boy with observant eyes and worn sneakers. Daniel couldn't always afford childcare, so he'd bring Mateo along on Saturdays when the building was mostly empty. The boy would sit in the break room doing homework or reading, while his father cleaned offices. One evening, Victor stayed late at the office. He had just finalized a deal worth hundreds of millions. The boardroom lights were still on. The city glowed outside the glass walls. As he stepped out of his office, he saw something unusual. Mateo was carefully arranging a stack of books that had fallen off a shelf in the lobby. No one had asked him to. He just noticed a mess and fixed it. Victor paused. He watched from a distance as the boy adjusted each book until they were perfectly aligned. Then Mateo picked up a piece of trash near a chair and tossed it into the bin. Victor felt something stir in him. Curiosity. The next Saturday, Victor had an idea. He arrived at the building earlier than usual. He wore casual clothes instead of his tailored suit. He walked into his executive lounge and laid down on the leather couch near the window. He left his office door slightly open. On the coffee table beside him, he placed his wallet. It was thick, filled with cash and black cards. He also left his gold watch beside an extremely rare piece worth more than most people's homes. Then he closed his eyes. He pretended to sleep. He knew Daniel and Mateo would be working that floor soon. Victor wanted to see something. He told himself it was harmless, just a small test, a way to measure character. After all, temptation reveals truth, doesn't it? About 20 minutes later, he heard the faint squeak of a cleaning cart, the soft hum of a vacuum, low footsteps. Daniel's voice drifted down the hall. Mateo, stay near me. Okay, yes, Papa, the boy replied. The door creaked slightly as Daniel pushed it open to clean the lounge. Victor slowed his breathing. Through half-closed eyes, he saw Daniel freeze. The billionaire CEO's leaping on the couch, wallet and watch exposed. Daniel stepped closer. His eyes landed on the money, on the watch. Victor felt a strange tension in his chest. Daniel gently nudged Mateo back. We'll clean this room last, he whispered. But Mateo looked at Victor, then at the items on the table. There it was. The moment Victor had been waiting for. Daniel leaned down and quietly picked up the wallet. Victor's heart pounded. Daniel opened it. For a split second, Victor felt both vindicated and disappointed. He knew it. No one could resist that much cash, but then Daniel did something unexpected. He counted the bills quickly. His brows furrowed not with greed, but concern. He turned to Mateo. Someone could walk in and take this, he murmured. That would be terrible. Mateo nodded seriously. Daniel placed the cash back exactly as he found it. Then he picked up the watch, examined it carefully, and gently placed both items inside a drawer of the nearby desk. He closed it softly. Then he pulled a small sticky note from his pocket, the kind he used to leave cleaning reminders. He wrote something on it and placed it on the coffee table. Victor couldn't see what it said. Daniel then quietly finished cleaning the room, careful not to disturb the sleeping billionaire. Mateo walked closer to Victor for a moment. Victor felt the boy's presence near him. Then something happened that froze him. Mateo gently took off his own thin jacket, the one with frayed sleeves, and placed it over Victor's legs. He looks cold, the boy whispered. Victor felt the warmth of the small jacket on his knees. His throat tightened. He had expected temptation, maybe even theft. He had not expected kindness. After they left the room, Victor opened his eyes immediately. His vision blurred for a second. He sat up and stared at the jacket. It was faded, clearly worn for years. Probably Mateo's only decent outer layer. Victor stood and walked to the desk. He opened the drawer. His wallet and watch were exactly where Daniel had placed them. Untouched. He picked up the sticky note from the table. It read, Sir, I moved your valuables to the desk drawer so they would be safe. Please forgive me if I overstepped. Daniel. Victor read it 3 times. No resentment. No self-righteous tone. Just quiet responsibility. And then his eyes drifted back to the jacket. That night, Victor couldn't sleep. He lay in his penthouse apartment, staring at the ceiling. He thought about Mateo's gesture, the instinct to protect a stranger, to give up warmth without hesitation. Victor had grown up poor. People didn't know that about him. He rarely spoke about it. He remembered cold nights. He remembered wishing someone would care. Somewhere along the way, in chasing success, he had replaced empathy with strategy. The next Monday, Victor called Daniel into his office. Daniel walked in nervously, hands clasped. "Sir, if this is about Saturday," Victor interrupted gently. "Sit down." Daniel sat at the edge of the chair. Victor studied him for a long moment. "Why didn't you take it?" Daniel blinked. "Take what, sir?" "My wallet, the cash, the watch." Daniel's face flushed red. "Because it isn't mine." Victor leaned back. "Many people would have." Daniel nodded slowly. "Maybe, but my son was there." Victor felt that sentence land heavily in the room. "I teach him every day that we may not have much," Daniel continued, "but we have our name. If I lose that, I lose everything." Victor was silent. "In the jacket?" Victor asked quietly. Daniel looked confused. "Jacket. Your son covered me." Daniel's expression softened. A faint smile appeared. "That sounds like him." Victor stood and walked toward the window. The city stretched below them. "Daniel," he said finally, "how much do you make here?" Daniel hesitated. "Enough to get by, sir." That wasn't the question. When Daniel answered, Victor realized something painful. The man who protected his company's building every night could barely afford proper childcare. Victor turned around. "I built this company on the belief that numbers matter most," he said slowly, "but I was wrong." Daniel looked stunned. Victor walked back to his desk and slid a folder across to him. Inside was a scholarship fund. "Document for Mateo. Full tuition coverage through college." Daniel's hands trembled. "Sir, this is too much." "No," Victor replied firmly. "It's not enough," he continued. "I'm also promoting you to facilities manager. Salary increase, benefits, day shift." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. He tried desperately to hide. "But there's one condition," Victor added. Daniel straightened. "Anything?" Victor smiled faintly. "Keep raising your son exactly the way you are." Daniel let out a shaky laugh. That evening, Victor asked to meet Mateo personally. The boy stood in the grand office, looking small but unafraid. "Why did you give me your jacket?" Victor asked gently. Mateo shrugged. "Because you looked cold." Victor knelt slightly to meet his eyes. "What if I told you I was pretending?" Mateo frowned. "Pretending? I wasn't really asleep." The boy thought about that for a moment. "Then, you still looked cold." Victor couldn't argue with that logic. From that day forward, things began to change in ways Victor never anticipated. He started spending more time walking the building floors. He spoke to employees by name. He implemented education grants for workers' families. He created child care support programs. The board questioned his sudden shift in priorities. Victor simply told them, "Loyalty isn't bought with fear, it's earned with respect." Months passed. Mateo began visiting the office, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Victor would sometimes let him sit in meetings. The boy asked surprisingly sharp questions. One afternoon, Victor found himself laughing, truly laughing for the first time in years. All because of a simple jacket. But the moment that truly froze him wasn't just the kindness. It was the realization of how close he had come to confirming his worst assumptions about people. He had expected betrayal. Instead, he found integrity. He had expected temptation to win. Instead, he saw character stand firm. And in that moment, on the couch, when a child with almost nothing chose to give warmth to a man who had everything, Victor understood something no business book had ever taught him. Wealth doesn't measure value, character does. Years later, at a company anniversary gala, Victor stood on stage addressing hundreds of employees. He told them the story, not naming Daniel or Mateo but describing the test and the lesson he learned. The room was silent at the end of his speech. He said, "The greatest investment I ever made wasn't in technology or real estate. It was in trust." In the front row, Daniel sat proudly beside his son. Mateo, now older, met Victor's eyes and smiled. Victor smiled back, because sometimes, the person being tested isn't the one you think, and sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can thaw the coldest heart. If this story moved you even a little, don't forget to like the video and share it with someone who still believes that integrity matters. Because in a world obsessed with wealth and power, it's the quiet choices that truly define us.